Good day and welcome back to another DB Legends video. In this video we are going to be taking a look at Red Pan. So we're going to be taking a look at just how good Red Pan is, and we're going to see whether you should use Red Pan. Now this is Red Pan at 1 star. I was not fortunate enough to pull any of Pan at the time of filming this video, so I decided to do a review on her as a 1 star, since a lot of players would have received her as part of the login rewards. Now, in terms of Pan, she is a support type unit. She's predominantly going to be run on Saga from the Movies teams, on family teams, or hybrid Saiyan teams, I believe. But overall, she's pretty cool. Her main ability is Energetic Young Lady, which randomly destroys 2 of your cards and draws a special move and special arts card next, which is pretty good. She restores her own ki by 50, shortens your ally's substitution counts, nullifies own unfavorable element factors, and increases your art card's draw card speed for 60 timer counts. In terms of her Z abilities, she beefs up quite a few categories, mainly just Saga from the Movies, and eventually Hybrid Saiyans, and then she also adds critical chance to Son family. Now Pan, because of how valuable health is a unit you could probably run as a lead for a lot of categories, just because of how strong Pan is as a unit. Then in terms of her overall abilities, her unique abilities, or her passives as it's better known to some people, she has Earth's Strongest Little Girl, which gives her plus 25% to damage inflicted, damage reduction of only 20%, and 20% ki recovery plus 25% special move damage inflicted. She also applies the following effects to all enemies when she enters the battlefield: attribute downgrades of 10% and 20% and 30% to strike arts and blast arts power, 20% to special move, ultimate and awakened arts power, and minus 30% to critical rate for 20 timer counts. This applies every time she is switched into the battlefield, and so it makes her pretty potent a switch-in target. When she switches to standby, she will give health restoration to the rest of your team and increase damage to the rest of them, as well as restoring your ki by 40. So she's really the kind of unit you want to switch in and switch out. She also has a cover change as well, which can be used against most strike art cards, and the following effect occurs every time when hit with an enemy's strike, blast, or special arts attack. It will inflict all enemies with 2 substitution counts. Activation count resets when characters switch in. She reduces enemy ki by 15, and shortens allied character Gohan or character Piccolo substitution counts by 1. It will also apply the following effects to allies after the enemy attack is over: plus 30% to damage inflicted, health restoration of 5%, and cancels attribute downgrades. So pretty good stuff. She's very clearly designed to be switched in rapidly, both to debuff the enemy and enable her to keep buffing up your team. So that's kind of her premise. On her abilities, she will increase her damage inflicted by 5% for allies on her strike arts, increase damage inflicted by allies for 5% on her blast card arts, and on her special move she deals massive impact damage, increasing your own Dragon Balls by 1, which can activate up to 33 times, and applies attribute downgrade short your substitution counter. She says ki control reduction of the enemy ki by 35, inflicts all enemies with a debuff of minus 100% ki recovery and minus 20% to health recovery, seals all their main abilities, and shortens your allies' substitution counts by 3. So she's very, very strong as a support unit. In terms of Pan, I think overall she's just a very, very powerful character. And I think in general she can be used by pretty much anyone. Now in terms of gear, you will have noticed that I did give her the Ha Ha Ha, which is a platinum equip that is for Red Saga from the Movies characters. This was just for some raw stats, although I wouldn't really suggest this. Your best bet is actually to more function along the lines of giving Pan as much health as possible. So you want to give her equips that kind of lend into giving her some health, because her main appeal is going to be switching in to debuff and then switching back out. Defense is also much appreciated, but the revived hero, Tapion's gold equip, is going to be a very good one to give us base health, which is always good, and base strike attack. Then you have No Way, the Broly equipment, very similar as well, and that's going to be base health and some base blast and strike attack defense. So these equipments are generally where you want to kind of aim with Pan, just because of the fact that health as a functionality is going to work so much better with her. You can then go for something like Let's Go, possibly, which is a good equip for special damage, or the awakened variants of either of these equipments, which are also fairly decent. Generally speaking, I think Pan is a pretty solid character with very good gear choices that someone can run and generally get a pretty good performance out of her. You can see, by the way, how well she functions as a unit, even without being paired with Gohan, or being paired, with anyone strictly speaking, that fully benefits from her passive. You can see how much her switching in debuffs the enemy. You can see how much synergy it has really with any team that Pan is on. Pan can really provide good support to the rest of the category, and I think overall is a unit that's going to be quite fun to run that way. Obviously, it's going to be entirely up to you to determine exactly how you want to build Pan, but I would say prioritizing defenses and prioritizing health is always a pretty good place to go when you are looking at how you want to run Pan. At least for me, I find that that's really where we want to kind of seek her, and where we kind of want to place her as a unit. It's not to say that she can't do any damage, but generally her switching in and out is going to lead to a far more effective time than if we don't. And you can see here, obviously not playing too well in this first match, but that's okay. The main thing is that Pan is showing off how many debuffs she can apply to the opposition, and it's very, very good stuff. It's not just the debuffing, there's a lot of benefits to a lot of these things. Her debuffing is great, but also she provides a whole bunch of support to our own team. Switching her out will grant us 5% health, which is always fantastic. And just in general, she can do a very, very, very good job as a unit. So I was very impressed with Pan. I think, you could probably run her on pretty much any team that you want to, and I would definitely consider running her as a lead for the majority of teams that I want to run in competitive play. The health and the critical hit buffs are highly valuable, and there's really minimal need to adjust or switch anything like that. Obviously, she has some pretty apparent synergies with Piccolo and Gohan, which I think is undeniable and is kind of part of the character's passive, but it doesn't mean it's just restricted to Beast Gohan or Power Awakened Piccolo. Obviously those are the best options to synergize her with, but generally speaking, you could run her alongside a lot of other units and get similar benefits. So Pan, obviously we didn't look super duper great in that first fight. That's more because of me not really performing up to scratch. It does tend to happen, but in the second fight we do have a little bit of a better time, although I think this account is what I would classify as a bot. But generally speaking, I think Pan, the benefits are definitely apparent, and I found her to be an exceptional unit. So it is important that you don't start with Pan. Having Pan out in the field is not necessarily the best method of using Pan as a unit. You definitely want to have her switch in. You can see here we really do nice sync in with a little bit of these debuffs. Really do manage to really kind of build them up. Get her to do a couple attacks, which boosts our own damage. We can then use our support card to shorten the substitution time accounts and to inflict more debuffs on the opposition. So there's a lot of kind of great synergy with that. Switch her in, we got a lot of debuffs on good old Cell there. Obviously, ideally we would switch her out more often. So instead of having this issue where it's like, okay, we want to switch her out, hit the debuffs, then hopefully have a special card lined up, maybe have an ultimate lined up, and we can switch her in, switch her out, and really kind of get a good benefit off of them. A lot of attacks as well would help build up the offensive capabilities of our rest of our roster, but it's not really the absolute necessity at this time. It's just how you play her. You really want to be active with that switching. If you're not going to be active with switching, if you're not going to be mindful of when you have special cards, rather don't run Pan. You could run her, but she's not going to be as effective. That ability for her to come in, hit 2 specials, shorten the substitution karma count, maybe hit an ultimate, maybe hit a strike attack, basically be a unit that pops in, hits once or twice, pops back out, buffs up the rest of the rotation. You'll switch back in Piccolo or Gohan or whichever team you're running her on, and they'll have 10% extra attack, 20% extra attack. Slowly over time they'll heal up, they'll come back in, your enemy will be muted, they'll be debuffed, they'll just have a whole bunch of benefits that you can run them with. So you need to be accessing that kind of gameplay. You have to get invested in the active art of controlling when you switch her in and when you don't. And that's important to understand how her mechanics work. You need to understand how her cover change works. You need to understand a lot of things about Pan to really manifest something good with her gameplay. With that being said, she's not distinctively hard to use. Her premise is simple: switch in, switch out. All you have to do really to make Pan work is to monitor when your green cards are in your hand, because green cards are really where she's going to thrive in shortening the substitution count. You also want to make sure that she has a lot of health, like I said, from her equipment. That extra 20% health is going to help out Pan a lot. She needs it to kind of survive attacks. She doesn't have a lot of base damage reduction, so having that extra health is really going to improve where she kind of lies on the spectrum of tankiness. So I 100% would suggest that you get invested, you get a bit more involved in using Pan to her full extent. At least for me, I find that that's really going to be where she thrives. I'm going to show you here, I'm using Pan as a number 1. Definitely not an ideal situation to run Pan as a number 1. There's a lot you lose out on, more so than just the fact that she's not the greatest starting unit due to her low defense. You do get the debuffs, which is nice, but the big problem is immediately you can kind of get put on the back foot by having such a weak defensive unit out there. Also, generally, unless your starting hand is something like a whole bunch of greens, there's no real benefit to having Pan started. 1, substitution counters don't exist, so you already can bring in both other units immediately. 2, just switching in Pan or having Pan switch in isn't a great situation, or switch out isn't a great situation like you saw with me here, because you do get the debuffs, but you don't really get many of the other benefits. The healing doesn't really massively kick in. You don't get a lot of healing on the units, and so you can kind of be left in a situation where you've kind of gone a little bit awry as a unit. So that is a little bit of a shame. It's also one of the reasons why, I must admit, I do prefer to run Pan as the second slotter. Here you can see with Pan in general, I'm just switching it in as best we can whenever we can. Here we get a great counter. We managed to debuff the Legends Limited Team Trunks, and we get 2 support cards, which is great because it really does lower our substitution timer counts, which is fantastic. There's no blast armor on our ultimate, which I forgot at the time, but immediately you can kind of see now Pan's really starting to ramp things up and kind of get going. I'm also okay with Vegito being in this situation. Obviously his ability to revive essentially being quite a strong ability to kind of pair into this situation. With that being said, you can see we're not doing a lot of damage at this time, but managing to use Pan to effectively manage the opposition basically to continue debuffing them and to also keep healing our rotation as best we can. So although we haven't necessarily got going yet, we're only 1 or 2 attacks away from really setting things up. We've managed to kind of build up the attack as well of our units, which is always fantastic. And you can see that we start to do good damage almost immediately, which is something that is pretty valuable. So immediately we're starting to do kind of this good kind of section of damage, and all that build up that we've had from having Pan switch in and switch out, constantly getting some strikes and constantly launching attacks, keeping our units buffed, is starting to pay dividends now at this point. We've managed to eliminate Gogeta, which is fantastic. So that's 1 unit down. We did use the Rising Rush, which is okay. We've still got the debuffs kicking in, so that's all very good stuff. We now managed to get a hit on Trunks, which is good. Get him switched back out. We now look at switching back in Pan, which is fantastic. Pan, although she dies, this is more than fine. Pan's done her job by switching back in. She's debuffed Piccolo, and now we're able to really counter in on Piccolo with some strike attacks. These strike attacks building up Vegito and really just letting him heal up and do some good damage. Now we have that, we're going to shift in. We're going to remove Piccolo by using the super attack. This is going to help us out, really just in kind of eliminating Piccolo completely. Now we have a full upper hand here. So very, very, apparent as to how good our, team setup was and how we managed to kind of keep things going. Still are in a tough match here. Obviously his Trunks is still full power, which is very good, and he is going to be able to take out our Vegito by using his ultimate ability, which obviously prevents our revive. So there is a lot going on. Pan didn't just set us up for victory completely, but we did a fantastic job in making sure that we managed to really control how things went. So although it was a very, very tough fight, Pan, I think, showed off a lot of her utility here. As a unit, I think she just managed to really flex and show how she can keep the rotation alive. Even though we are constantly on the back foot, a lot of the time it is very, very much so something where I think we can be very, very productive. And obviously through a bit of fortune, but also just managing to hang into the fight and keep things going, we do manage to get the victory here. We managed to stay on top of the Trunks, we managed to continue racking up the damage, and we eventually get things done by forcing through the Rising Rush. So at the end of the day, it really goes to show that the healing of Pan, the constant support of Pan, the ability for Pan's cover change, which came in handy twice in this situation, is all very, very helpful mechanics that basically got us this win, which wasn't a surprising win. We should have won, but when you start off on the back foot, having Pan in there to constantly keep up rotating things, keep switching, keep healing, is very, very good. So yeah, that is basically it. That is, I thought, a good look at Pan. I think if you are interested in PvP, you can definitely look at improving on my build for Pan 100%. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. So until then, take care, stay safe, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.